welcome everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. We're finally back. I think it's been a while. We're finally back with our dear friend Terry Hershey. The topic we plan to chat about today is the role of the ordinary, the everyday, in the lexicon of spirituality. For most of us, the idea of the divine is often thought of as a special, unique, and oftentimes spectacular occurrence. But the truth is, God is most frequently found in ordinary occasions of work and play and familiar relationships. I looked up the word epiphany, and what typically comes to mind is that we understand seeing God in the miraculous or the special, or like our producer says, in church or in a cathedral. But the dictionary definition of epiphany means simply a manifestation of God. And in our minds, divine manifestations actually occur in daily and everyday, regular life. Terry has a book called Sanctuary, Creating Space for Grace in Your Life. And it not only defines where we can find God, it describes and suggests habits for doing so. It's a way to approach and embrace your daily life through a lens of grace, freedom, and contentedness. So let's get at it. Yo, Hirsch.
Charles.
Terry.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'm always glad when you're here.
Yeah, slower than I used to be, but that's just age.
My God, and you're younger than me, so we have to be careful. Because 75, there is a slowness coming on, but it's such a beautiful slowness. It's a slowness.
I am in, speaking of even the topic today, is my whole thing is about the pause button, hitting the pause button, and allowing whatever it is that we're going through the day in to go through slowly. Because when you allow that, then you notice it. And when you notice it, you're there. You're paying attention. You're in the moment. That's it's really what we're talking about today, the hiding place for the holy. But the other phrase is the sacrament of the present moment, which is my favorite phrases from the 17th century.
Yeah, I love that. I also love the idea, and we're going to talk about the idea of paying attention. It calls for, in order to see the holiness of the ordinary, for the most part, not always, it requires a discipline of paying attention, of almost looking for the holy, of translating beauty and wonder through the lens of holiness.
Here's what I would argue it this way, though. If you're paying attention and you take delight in the moment, in the ordinary, you see it, you savor it, you pause. Already it is holiness there.
Yes.
In other words, you're not trying to create it or make it holy or look for the holy. Because you're paying attention. Here, there's a great Zen story about a Zen Roshi, Zen leader. He's dying, and so all the other monks want to know who's going to be the next Roshi, because that's how it's determined, is the leader names the next one. So they're all around the deathbed of the leader because they all want to be the next leader, the next Roshi, the next teacher. And so the Roshi asked slowly, "Where's the gardener?" And the other monk said, "The gardener? Are you kidding me? He's just a simple man who tends the plants. He's not even ordained." And the Roshi says, "Yes, but he's the only one here who is awake. He'll be the next teacher."
You know what's helpful in that, in our discussion, and perhaps I didn't phrase it correctly, is making that leap from beauty and wonder that we see, that we're so enwrapped with, because both of us are enwrapped with natural beauty, with art, with physical art, with poetry. All of these things take us to a special place. But I think it has taken for me almost a conscious effort to say this special place is a holy place. It's taken, I have to make a conscious effort in the beginning to see that as holy, to not see to not limit the holy to the spectacular, but to the ordinary. That's all I was saying. I've got to be able to make that leap. I need help making that leap, and your books and your talking are helping us all make that leap.
Well, I think it's because we're wired to keep score in a different way in our culture. That we teach our children how to weigh and measure, and instead we should teach them awe and wonder. That's Abraham Heschel, Jewish rabbi. Love that. I was raised in a church tradition, and our culture is this way. Our Western culture is very cerebral, and we weigh and measure, and we keep score. And it's no surprise that holiness is connected to a scorecard, so we're looking for the spectacular things that give more score to it. And so we miss moments of awe and wonder. We miss moments of delight. Did you see the story I wrote in Sabbath Moment a couple of weeks ago?
I'm sure I did, but I doubt I can bring it to memory. I'm old.
Yeah, but I was hoping you'd remember it because I've forgotten it. Because
that was a good one, Hirsch.
It's a great story about the symphony in Boston.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I'm getting.
Yeah.
They're at Hayden. They're playing.
What did he say? Yay or hooray or?
No, he said. So you know how it is, and we've all been to these concerts, classical concerts, and when it's exquisite, and then as soon as the bows are set aside, the last note, just silence in the audience, and then there's applause. Right? All been to these concerts. During that silence, this young boy's voice just shouts out, "Wow!"
Yeah, not yay or hooray. Wow! Yeah.
Wow! And anyway,
and he was a 9-year-old, wasn't he? A 9 or 10-year-old?
Yeah. Moment of silence, and then the wow, and then there's laughter, and then there's great applause. And the conductor said, "That's the most marvelous event I've ever experienced at a concert."
Yeah.
Because the little boy doing exactly what you just said. He saw holiness, the sacred, and the ordinary.
When Austin was old enough for me to carry him around, or young enough for me to carry him around, so he must have been around 3, because we were in a Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock Wednesday morning church service that is primarily our liturgical Episcopal traditions, that's primarily for the Eucharist. And for me, the Eucharist is the holiest of holies, most wonderful moment. I love the Eucharist. And so we were standing in a circle. There was fewer than 10 of us at this service. We're standing in a circle, and the priest, dressed in his garb, is passing the bread to everybody. And so I'm holding Austin in one arm, and I have a hand out waiting for the bread. The priest goes and gives everybody, and Austin says, "I want some." And the priest said, "If we only had a heart like that for the Eucharist." And it was a beautiful saying of the child caught the ordinariness.
I want some.
I want some, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So you and I dwell in the domain of the ordinary, where God is evident in all things, because so often we miss the divinity of life. And I was thinking, Hirsch, several decades ago, and I'm thinking it had to be the 80s or early 90s, but probably 80s. I read a book by Frederick Buechner that was titled, do you remember the book Telling the Truth? His book, Telling the Truth, The Gospel as Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale. It was a brilliant book. And this was a book that I was first introduced to ordinary spirituality. And Buechner suggested that his tool shed was a holy and sacred place. I loved it, but I didn't catch it like I catch it today. And so as I've been thinking about it, it made me think of you and gardening tools. And for you, gardening tools are holy instruments only found in the Old Testament temple. Tell me why the whole tool shed would be a holy place, a sacred place.
When I was in therapy, I once asked my therapist why I was in therapy.
So I know the answer to this, so I'll let you tell everybody.
He said, because it'll make you a better gardener. And I thought, in other words, because gardening is what grounds me. It's literal. It's what grounds me. And one of my favorite quotes is a May Sarton quote that she says she spends the first half hour of every morning enjoying the air and watching for miracles. And the miracles are those little things you don't see unless you're close to the ground. Every bit a part of that. I get the tool shed. I've got secators. Secators is a name for the thing that you clip things in the garden. Yeah, that's a holy tool because I'm with them and I'm in the garden. Everything I see is a gift. And even people would say, yeah, but you're going to see weeds. And I'm saying, yes. But the marvelousness of the weeds is amazing to me and why they grow there. And the permission for me to be there is unbelievable. And the seasons of life and all that I see and all of that. And the best part about it is the whole process slows me down in a way nothing else ever has before.
Now you're getting to it. That slows you down in a way. Now you're getting to it. Because your spades and your, what did you call them? Your clippers?
Secators, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Secators?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've never heard that term. Those are holy. Those are like the Old Testament priests that had the incense and the bowls and all of these instruments to perform holy sacrifices, to have scents and smoke and beauty to God. And these are revered. They're put in special places and only certain people can touch them. Yet you find holiness in the cicadas and the shovels and the spades, and those are holy instruments that and I like that ground you.
Because when that is happening, I am literally, quite literally, go back to paying attention, I'm quite literally present. I'm not in the future anymore. I'm not in the past anymore. I'm literally right here in this moment. Being in this moment is the sacrament of the present moment. That's the sacred, is be in this moment. If I'm not in this moment, I don't see the sacred at all. I don't see the holy at all. I only see what to worry about, what needs to be done. But I don't savor this. Because the power of that, the power of all of that, what's being fueled when you have gratitude. In other words, when your response is thank you. You know the Meister Eckhart prayer. Mm-hmm. Just need it's 2-word prayers. All you need, mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. How do you know if you see the sacred? When you just mouth the words, thank you. Thank you.
This is powerful for me. This is really, as much as I've lived in this world, just talking to you about it, in this world of ordinary holiness, just talking to you about it really just puts goose flesh on me because it's so meaningful. And I have 2 questions for you. I'm sure since I've questioned it several times, our listeners are wondering, how in the world are you guys defining holy and sacred? What does that mean? But I'm going to ask you, I want you to tell me your definition or your description of what is holy and sacred. What does that mean? But I'd like you to tell us a story you've told us before to lead into that. And I'd love for you to tell us a story of your rendition of Moses and the burning bush.
Okay, and then and the word you use is appropriate for all of this. That's called goose flesh. Like goose flesh, goosebumps, because there's an aliveness to that. That's the whole point. Is the goose flesh just says, I'm here now.
Yeah.
The burning bush story is, even people who don't know the Bible know the story of Moses and the burning bush. That Moses, there's a bush that started to burn, and there's a voice that came, and the voice was God's voice. It made me smile as a kid, thinking, how do you know it's God's voice? But anyway, that was just me. Apparently they know what God's voice sounds like. But Anyway, they knew it was God's voice. So God was speaking out of the bush and said, Moses. And of course, the word I use the word paradigm a lot, Charlie, because we say things and hear things and believe things. It's not really what we say and hear and believe. It's the paradigm we use that determines how we process it. Story is, I've heard it preached hundreds of times as a boy raised in a conservative church, but it said Moses, in the first sentence, is, you are on holy ground. And the way that people preached it is God's voice was stern, a baritone obviously, but very stern. In other words, it's meant to whip you into shape and a little bit scare you. You're on holy ground. Holy crap. I'm on holy ground. Now, just think about that just for a minute. That the way it's preached, just because it says that, the way it's preached is, you're on holy ground is meant to startle you, frighten you, make you into shape. Interesting. Wow. And then he says, because you're on holy ground, the voice, God's voice, says, take your shoes off. Here's the way it was preached to me. On holy ground, you better get your act together, take your shoes off on holy ground. Do you know who you're in front of? You're in front of God. You better pay attention, dude, boy. What's your name? I'm thinking, wow, this really isn't about holiness as much as it is some sense of shame that I don't measure up being here. Yet, just read the sentence. Moses, you're on holy ground, take your shoes off. Think about it just for a minute. Have you ever been to the beach? Have you ever taken your shoes off? What do you do when you take your shoes off? Thinking, thank God, get to touch the sand.
And you dig your feet into the sand.
Dig your feet into the sand, and you have goose flesh. And you roll up your pants.
Yeah.
And so the whole point of this is Moses, guess what? You're on holy ground. Take your shoes off. Here's the thing. Your shoes are blocking joy, the holiness. Ideal is what's blocking the permission, the joy of the holiness.
I'm silent. I'm not allowed to be silent. Paul always tells me, but I'm silent because you really got me thinking. That is it. That is, the shoes are an obstacle. The shoes are a deterrent. It's something that...
And the shoes are a very religious thing. It's like, I want to impress God. Fine. Impress him. But you're not going to savor the sand in your prayer. Not going to savor the sand in your joy in your day. You're not going to. You're going to miss it.
Where do we get the idea? I've got to go back to what you just said. Where do we get the idea that I've got to impress God? Is that taught in religious places? I've never heard that, but that's a scary thought. Is that taught in conservative churches?
100% of the time.
Really? How can you impress God?
You have to it's called measuring up, and you know that. You've seen that in churches. You have to measure up.
Okay.
You know that.
Okay.
Have to measure up, and if you don't measure up, then think about it, Charlie. It's technically the definition of holiness is measuring up to God's perfection. You're imperfect, so you're not holy. That's why we call the saints holy, because they're closer to, quote, perfect. It's just so staggering that we've done that to the word holy.
Yeah, isn't the seminary definition of holy of what is it? What is the Hebrew word? Hagosh. I'm sorry, I can't remember the Hebrew word, but it means, I was taught, it means to be separate. Holy is to be separate. And I just think that's a bullshit definition. I just do not adopt that.
I don't disagree with you, and I think there's so much of what we've done with theology and framing our belief about God/theology is so cerebral. And when it's cerebral, we do it that way. We miss the visceral. We miss the connection to the personal. We miss it. And that's what we do is then we have a pecking order. And in our church, we knew those people are more holy than these people. It's, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't a contest. This isn't a race. This isn't a beauty pageant. This is a party where you get to take your shoes off. Why can't we let each other take our shoes off?
I don't know what this has to do with holiness, but you know what my son does before a baseball game? And he's got the starting pitcher doing the same thing. My son is a baseball player, for those who don't know, and I can't imagine anybody that's listening to me doesn't know that. But you know what they do? He will do it with the pitcher before the game, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game. They take their shoes off and they walk the outfield. They walk the outfield, grounding themselves into the grass of the field. So they become one with the field. They become one with the place that they're playing. They're treating the baseball field as a holy place, and that they want to be in touch, in contact. And there's reporters wondering, that I've read reports just saying, what the hell are they doing out there?
Yeah, that's a great story. I'm an advocate for all the kind of rituals that any of us do, whether it's garden tools or shaking your shoes off in the outfield, ground us.
And again, I'm going to definitionalize, if there's such a verb. What is grounding and what does that do? Because that's very important in this conversation.
The way I frame it is literally be at home in my skin. And it's the story I've often told about the first grade class naming the 7 wonders of the world. I've probably told it on.
Yeah. Go ahead and tell it again. That's fine.
Yeah. 7 wonders of the world, and saying the Niagara Falls, the Grand Canyon, and the little girl says nothing because the kids are doing good, 7 wonders of the world. But she said, Susie said, I don't think I understand the question. She said, why? She said, because I don't have any of the right answers. And she said, but you read us what you got. And she said, the 7 wonders of the world are to see, to hear, to taste, to touch, to laugh, and to love, and to belong. That's the answer to your question. Is to be. That's just what. If we go back to the Christian faith, the remarkable thing about virtually every, we preached one sermon, Jesus, but every parable he told connected us to one of those: see, hear, taste, touch. They were all grounded.
Yeah.
They were all viscerally right here.
As you listed those senses, I was thinking, my brain was right in track with you, and I was thinking those are the instruments to see God, to feel God, to touch God, to hear God.
But think about every parable he told, he invites one of those senses.
Yeah.
Every single one. In other words, before I tell you the story, be here.
Let's rehearse, because it's my next question, and then we'll take a break, Paul. And then we'll take a break. We've talked about the negativity in the church perspective, in Terry's perspective, and in through Celtic eyes. What sets apart, because there maybe is a setting apart, but what sets apart the holy and sacred? What makes them unique, different, something that I can manifest God through these experiences?
Why do you need to manifest God? God's already there.
Recognize then. Recognize the presence. Because I'm so damn busy counting, I don't recognize.
Read you something from my book, Soul Gardening. How's that?
I love it. Love the book.
It's about spirituality and holiness. Let's talk about holiness.
Okay.
It conjures images of the fervent and the unctuous, people who could benefit from a substantial amount of roughage in their diets. Those who are apparently have no real life to live, spending their energies cashing in their coupons for harps on clouds. Streets of gold up yonder. However, holiness, this spirituality is not about a lottery ticket to the next life, the front row center ticket to this one. Yes, even this life with its traffic, its ill-timed meetings, bleeping cell phones, demanding children, yammering pain in the next obligations, this life, where once in a while, just for a minute, you stop what you're doing. You watch the clouds roll through the northern sky, conveyor belt of fleece, and the wind is out of the southwest, filling your lungs. You catch a glimpse of the blue heron gliding like a javelin across the sky. The world is now on center stage, which means right here where I am. No longer peripheral, my duties and obligations, and the full weight of this moment the full weight of this moment seeps its way back into the grind, the everyday, slowing our heartbeat, giving us a gentler step, and a gleam in the eye. And yes, even in the middle of that, other stuff. I'm glad to be here now. I'm glad to be alive.
Great writing, Terry. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. No wonder I love that book so much. Let's take a quick break and come back. Hi, y'all. This is Charlie Hedges, and you are listening to The Next Chapter. And Terry Hershey and I are talking about a subject that I hope you find important, because I find it critically important in my life. And it's about the place of holiness in the everyday. It's not man-made, so you're not going to find it. You can find it in buildings, because there are buildings that generate beauty and awe and wonder, and that is the hand of God on human beings to do that. But it's seeing God in all things. What do you think? Did I come close?
I'll give you an illustration. I've been to Notre Dame a few times, and when you walk in, what's a marvel about walking in there, just looking at it, you're going, oh my God, okay, that's a holy place. You walk in, and what's a marvel about that is hundreds of people who are visiting in there. The vast majority probably not necessarily religious, and yet there's a silence. In other words, they know they're in a place, okay? Know it. They're in a, quote, holy place. And yet, on my way walking there along the Seine, which is the river, I can feel the breeze on my skin. I am tasting the espresso I just bought from the shop on the way there. Every one of that's holy too.
So holiness is somehow, as I was alluding to earlier, is somehow an awareness of the hand of God in everything that's created.
The Zen teacher said he's the only one who's awake. He's awake.
Yeah, an awakeness. Okay, I'm gonna go where that you aren't ready to go. Although you're very prepared to go there, you're just not ready for this. This past weekend, I was at a retreat, and it was with very down-to-earth, very sort of common holiness among lay people. There was about 450 people at this retreat. And for the first time, I was made aware of, and listeners beware, because this is, I think, going to be part of who I am, but as aware, I became introduced to the notion of Christian shamanism. And those sound like oxymoron to some people, but they're not. They're not. Shamanism is acutely focused on ordinary spaces for spirituality, like singing and dancing and even working the land. Here was a definition I find. Shamanic Christianity is a spiritual practice that combines a set of traditional beliefs and practices that involve communicating with the spirit world with Christian beliefs and Christian practices. That's for the Christian. But the shaman is a non-religious entity, a non-religious person that's not, they're spiritual, they're religious, but they're not attached to any specific religion. And there were four things that, and we've already talked about one, that I would like to have you address, and that is, everything sacred is found in all things, animate and inanimate. All things created possess spiritual resonance, the interconnectedness of all life, because they are made from the same DNA that we are made from. They're made from the cosmic explosion. If it was a Big Bang, which seems evident to me at this point, that is part of God making, or everything being part of God. So all things, all sacred things are found in all things. The land is sacred. People are sacred. And then I put garden tools are sacred. So talk to me about, we've talked a lot about all things being sacred. What about, how do you feel about, and you can disagree because I'm getting pretty radical here, but how do you feel about the spirituality of the animate and the inanimate, that there is spirituality in trees, there's spirituality in rocks, there's spirituality in dirt, there's mountains, rivers are gleaming with spirituality. How do you feel about that?
Do you want to know my sophisticated answer?
I want to know whichever one is on your heart.
Duh.
Well, you know what that's called in Christianity, in the Christian heretical terms, that's called animism.
That's because in Western Christianity, we're a pecking order and we keep score. When you're a pecking order and you keep score, something has to win. And when something has to win, you miss some of the good stuff. One of the things that I like to do with people, speaking of Celtic spirituality, I went to university in London, and so I spent time when I was a kid. I was a kid then on the island of Iona. And Iona was where Celtic spirituality is. Mm-hmm. It was for Celtic spirituality. So Celtic spirituality was a part of my life back then. And the biggest invitation I have for people, rather than, quote, switching their, this was like a litany I've always done. It's probably in my books I have known, but I've already done the litany when I do people, is that rather than changing your belief system for that, like the spirituality for, it's very native spirituality, but
right.
I tell people, you need to change the questions you ask. In other words, our spirituality is not about a payoff. It's about, where am I attentive and present and grounded? That's all. If that's the invitation, I'm asking, then here's some different questions. Okay, you ready? Just normal questions. Are you ready? These are my spirituality questions for you. Are you ready? Are there butterflies in your garden? Are there dandelions in your lawn? And when was the last time your house smelled like fresh cut flowers? Do sunsets make you smile? Have you ever seen a sunflower bloom? Tell me what angle the sun enters your house in the morning. And tell me, have you ever been comforted by the sound of rain on your roof? When was the last time you watched hummingbirds dance? These are the questions now, because now in a world where the sacred is alive and well in every little bit of it. But you get to, I start with this. Give me the permission to ask different questions.
You said something to lead this off that led very well into what you were saying. And you said, I don't know if you can remember the three words, but groundedness, that the questions have to do with groundedness. Do you remember the other words that you used? We can look.
To be attentive, to be present, and to be grounded.
To be attentive, present, and grounded. Those are like the rules of life, are they not?
100%.
Those are the rules of life, to be grounded, to be attentive, and to be present?
Yeah. And so my deal is, instead of making it like a test for you, give yourself different questions, because if you have different questions, then you're going to invite all three of those things, which is really great.
Yeah, I love that. So moving on to my next thing that I listed, you as a gardener, I've seen so many of your gardens, but we had an experience where, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks where you worked on my garden in the Hunt Club?
Oh, yeah, I liked that. That was good.
It was a beautiful garden, and there was a piece where you were setting up for me a sanctuary. You were setting up a specific place with intention.
Yeah, because I said, this is my thing when I design gardens, is people show me pictures in magazines and say, can you do this? And the answer is, of course I can do that. With the amount of money, you can do anything you want. But that's not what it means. I ask them this question, and I give them a list of adjectives. What do you want to experience here? In other words, tell me what words you want to experience here, because if you can tell me that, I know in this garden you're going to be attentive and present and grounded. And you told me the words, and we made a garden that invited those words.
How many people do you think, what percentage of the population that do gardens and hire, you're a spiritual gardener, that are hiring somebody that's not spiritual as much, that are building a garden to impress people, have no idea of experience?
And that's not called garden, that's called landscaping. I have zero problem with landscaping. All public buildings have landscaping, but
it's an art. Yeah.
Landscaping is for public opinion only. It's to look good when you drive by. It has nothing to do with the experience of the person living there.
So what does it tell you about the client that wants to look good? What does that tell you about their life?
That's a really simple thing. It just says no one gave them the permission to ask different questions. It's the same for me growing up in a church. That tells me because the holiness for me was about landscaping. How am I supposed to look good to impress God? Nothing to do with my garden.
I had a conversation with an evangelical today who's got a ministry out of Chicago that is like ginormous. And it's a television, it's not a televangelist, it's a whole different sort of thing, but they have millions that are hundreds of thousands at least that watch what they do. And he was talking about his encounter with God, and he said, I look at the cross and the events of the cross, as we're both very educated in the events of the cross, and he said, how wonderful it is that I received from God what I did not deserve. Terry, that troubled me. And I told him, I said, it's not about deserving. This is, it's not, even grace is not about deserving. It is, grace is the core natural part of who you are, because that is who God is. And it's about love. And when I talked about love, I might as well have said, because he didn't get it. He did not understand love. That was like a 4-letter word, and it meant nothing. And to me, it means everything. But the idea of having to deserve God, he created us for his pleasure, as we say in the Episcopal liturgy.
As long as there's a pecking order, which is a performance mentality and a test mentality, then it's predicated on the fact if I'm not there, there's shame. And so I'm always worried about the next score. And if I'm always worried about the next score, I'm missing the joy of the craziness right now where I'm still loved in this me. I'm missing that. I'm missing every bit of it. And that's the whole thing about, in other words, missing the weeds in my own garden. Oh, exquisite they are.
Tell the story. Tell the weed story. I love the weed story about your pond that was filled with dandelions. It's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story, and it really sums up everything we're talking about.
This is a garden I had that was a pretty good-sized garden, and people who knew that I'd write, when they visited the island, they wanted to visit the garden, so I'd give them tours. But at a pond, pretty good-sized pond. Oh, you've seen the pond, and
yeah.
And the river and the waterfall that ran to it, and it wasn't quite done yet. And so because it wasn't done yet, it was just a mud pit, and I never showed the people the mud pit because it wasn't finished yet. I just showed them the parts of the garden that were finished, because you want to show them the best parts. And showing one group around, and one young woman in the group didn't know the rules, and so she went over to a part of the garden, which is where the pond was, and she standing by the pond, which was, quote, the mud pit. And I went over to explain to her that we're not going to be looking at that today, but someday don't worry, someday it'll look great. I have plans. I have plans. And then I realized what she's looking at, because it's been ignored. The mud pit is full of dandelions, and the stream that runs into it is dandelions. And I realized it looked like, literally, and they were in the golden flower, the golden flower.
The gold flower flowing into the gold flower.
Yeah, so it was like gold paint. And I realized gold paint flowing into the thing. And the woman goes, this is amazing. This is unbelievable. This is literally the most beautiful garden design I've ever seen. and then she said, "What ever made you think of this design?" And I said, "It just came to me one day."
You really could have said, "I have no frickin' idea. I had nothing to do with it."
Because I was waiting for it to be a perfect garden, then I could celebrate it and savor it, and then it could be holy, to miss the holiness of the dandelions.
The story of the dandelions sums up the idea of the ordinary. The ordinary cannot be fabricated. It doesn't mean it can't be man-made, because there are buildings, and bridges. I stop at every bridge that makes an attempt to be beautiful. I have to stop and look at it because I'm so fascinated by bridges, and they are spectacular places for me.
You get that. It's essentially an artist. Every artist that you know and we love, that's what they're doing, is they're reflecting the holiness inside of them. I get that 100%.
So the dandelions don't speak to the weeds in my garden. They speak to the beauty of my garden, untouched by my hands, and gifted by the hand of I use creator very purposefully, of the artist that watches what he does. I know I've told you this story, and I don't know if I've told it on the podcast, but almost every preacher gets Genesis 1 wrong. 7 times or 4 times, I don't know how many times God said it. But it is preached that after every day of creation, God said, and it was good. That is untrue. God did not say that. That is such a lie, and it really messes up the theology of the whole thing, Terry, because what God did is God saw that it was good. It was as if he was an artist, and he's looking at after he's done with this piece of art, and he says, "Damn, that's good. That's really good." So he didn't make it good by his word. He made it good by his observation that his work was good.
It's very good. That's very good. And that would be a better translation.
It is. No, it is a translation. It is. Read it. It is. No one says, everyone says, and God said it was good. God didn't. God saw that it was good. It is, every translation says that.
That's great.
And we've just miscommunicated it. Friend, you live in this world, and you endear me to live in this world as well. You are as much a Christian mystic as any mystic I know, and you don't follow the rules of the mystic. You have daily moments of contemplation and meditation, but you do have those. You just don't talk about them. You are of the mystic ilk, and I so appreciate that.
Thank you. Grateful.
Okay. I want to thank you, buddy. I love you.
Thanks, Charles.
Okay, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. So bye for now.